Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Adoption Happy Hour brought to you by NAAP. We are the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where it is our mission to elevate our diverse voices by promoting dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connections. I'm Marcie Keithley, your host for this evening. Joining me in the Zoom room are our current president, Jennifer Falsing, and Beth Story. We also have fellow board member Barbara Robertson in the room. So if you don't know Barbara, you can give her a shout out as well. So we're just happy that all of you have joined us this evening. We've got an excellent guest for you who's going to be sharing her story shortly. But before, we're going to have some announcements. And Beth, are you taking it or Jen? Okay. Again, we want to remind everyone this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and may be shared in our private happy hour group on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. If you don't follow us on Facebook, please go ahead and do that. It's under Adoption Happy Hour, where Terry's replay will be. Please remain on mute, raise your hand or screen or the virtual hand to be recognized. You may post your questions or comments in chat. If you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thought, please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988. At this time, too, if you would like, please go ahead and use the chat bar. Let us know how you identify, what state or country you're in, and give a shout out to our guest.
This is our regular monthly programming being advertised right now. We have happy hour first and third Fridays. First Families is normally the second Thursday of the month, and it is coming up on the 8th. Amber will be hosting on the 8th of August, First Families. Dr. Joyce's support group for Reunion will be on the third Tuesday, the 15th this month. It's generally the third Tuesday, moves around a little bit, but it will be August 15th, and registration link will be out soon for that. And then the last Thursday of the month, we have Danielle Gaudet with Self-Love Essentials for the Adoption Constellation. So pretty much every week you can find some type of NAAP program going on. And then we can't forget our in-person event that's coming up. We are hosting our second annual mini meetup, September 15th and 16th at Pokagon State Park, Angola, Indiana, and that's right on Lake James. When Jennifer talks about the lake, that's the lake she's talking about. She lives right across from this inn and this state park. You may have seen that the room block expired on August 1st, but we snagged several extra room reservations. And those will be first come, first served to whoever gets to us and says, hey, I want one of those rooms. You can actually register for the event up through September 6th. And we want to remind you, this is a small, relaxed, kind of fun yet intimate setting where we are just going to be hanging out together with Patricia Knight-Meyer will be our keynote speaker, and then several others will be sharing from their own healing journey. So it's really going to be a good time. We will drop some links in the chat so you can get some more information. And I think that's it for me.
Okay, I will share real quick. We did Untangling Our Roots this year. We listened to you guys. You said, do it again, but do it someplace with a easier to fly in airport. So we listened. Here's a little promo. So please save the date. We are back deep into the throes of event planning on this already. And we've got some really special things lined up for everybody. Bigger and better than the last time. So we're excited about that. So that's what I have for announcements.
Okay, anything else, guys? Okay, thank you, Jennifer and Beth. Okay, so at this time, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce our spotlight guest for this evening, Terri Champion, and let's learn a little bit about her. Terri is a graduate of St. Joseph's University of Philadelphia with a BA in psychology, a master's in divinity from Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary, a Master of Theology from Palmer Theological Seminary of Eastern University, and is pursuing a Master of Arts in Addictions Counseling and Co-occurring Disorders from Hazelden Betty Ford Graduate School of Addictions. Terri was the spokesperson for Feeding Tampa Bay and was featured on news channels 8, 10, and local ABC stations in the Tampa Bay area. She has also been featured as a national spokesperson for Feeding America organization with documentary on YouTube. She is a contributing writer in Rooted in Adoption, a collection of adoptee reflections by Veronica Breau and Shelby Kilgore, and also was featured in a documentary video, Kindred, Terri's Adoption Story. So at this time, let's welcome Terri to Happy Hour. How are you doing tonight, Terri?
I am doing just fine. Thank you so very much for that beautiful introduction and a little bit about me. I'm very modest when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'm like, oh, let me hide somewhere. But thank you so much for having me this evening, to the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, to the board who and all of you in your respective places within this illustrious organization. I thank you for the opportunity to have me on this evening. And I also want to say that I never heard of you until I was invited by a person, a good friend. He's also a fellow adoptee. I don't know if he's on the call this evening or not. Gentleman named Greg Gentry. And here's how it happened. So what happened was I was on my way to physical therapy because I had a broken shoulder blade. And I was just in intense pain. I was just not having a great time. And I get this text from Greg, says, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Or he said, are you going to the conference? I said, what conference? He said, the adoption conference. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything about it. Never heard of these people. So no. He said, yes, you are. And I said, well, when is it? He said, tomorrow. Now I'm sitting here with a broken shoulder, trying to figure out how in the world I'm going to get to Louisville, Kentucky tomorrow. And I said, okay, how much does it cost? When he told me that, I was like, well, I really just can't afford it. He said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And Greg blessed me with all that was needed for registration and all of that wonderful stuff. And thusly, that is how I met all of you. I showed up at Louisville, Kentucky, didn't know anything about any of this, but since becoming affiliated with the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, I have grown tremendously. I have learned a lot. I have met some of the most amazing people. And for that, I am so grateful to Greg and to all of you for such a wonderful conference. So let's begin. I was kind of juggling where to start. So I'm going to start here at the beginning. How about that? And we're going to start with this particular slide that speaks about what I'm talking about this evening. The title of my book that is soon to come out is Memoirs of the Anonymous Me. But this evening, we're going to talk about adoption and mental health. Mental health is my wheelhouse. It's where I think that we all need growth. We all need healing. We all need development. And so mental health is not just a sickness, but it's also an opportunity for healing. And that is the theme of the entire organization. And so for that, we're going to talk a little bit about my story and my journey of being adopted. As was mentioned by Marcie, you can read or listen to and watch further information or a documentary that was done by Shelby Kilgore, the writer of Rooted in Adoption. On YouTube, you can find it under Kindred and it'll have my name, Terri Champion, on there. So as I was putting this little slideshow together, this particular, I guess, quote from Lao Tzu came up that I really liked. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. If you take a look at the photographs, this was me at about a month or about 3 months old. My parents and the Nate and Sadie Walker chose me to become a part of their family. My birth date is October the 12th, 1963. So yeah, I'm about to turn 60 years old. For all of my 60-year-old people that are on the call, maybe you can give me some pointers on what that looks like. But my parents adopted me from the Children's Aid Society in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And for many, many years, I grew up as an only child. As you can see, this next photo, I often look at that picture and go, what in the world was I thinking? What was on my mind at 3 months old or so, thereabout? Obviously, I did not know at the time that I would grow up to be a thinker. And so I guess my parents posed me this way to prepare me for what my life's journey was going to, my life's path was going to take me down, and that being one of a scholar, one of a thinker. And I had no idea where in the world this all came from, nor did I have any idea who I really looked like. When I talked to my mother about how I got here, I asked my mom when I was 12 years old, was I adopted? See, how that happened was my brother and I had an argument one day waiting for the school bus. And while we were waiting on the school bus, I yanked his backpack off of his back, and we got to arguing and yelling out on the curb, and I threw his backpack down the sewer. I wonder if it's still there today. It might still be, don't know. But my brother began to say that he wanted to know, he yells out, "You're adopted." And I'm like, I'm what? So I get on the bus, go to school, don't know what in the world that all meant until I get home. And I sit down in my mom's office in this little itty bitty chair, it was about this big. And I asked Mom, was I adopted? And she said, yes. Now, she didn't really go into a whole lot of explanation about what adoption was, what it meant. She said, and I quote, "They chose me because she knew I would end up looking like them, looking like her family, looking like what her family would, what I would grow up to be." And I said, okay. And off I go to this place of wondering what in the world I would end up becoming. And so thusly, the title of my book is entitled X. So where did I come up with that? And I'm going to read you just a little bit of the introduction so you could get an idea of where this came from. X is an intriguing and mysterious letter, often indicative of something unidentified and unknown. That was my story. And when you really stop to think about X, where does it have its origin? Something to ponder. While choosing a title for the book, this is what crossed my mind. I asked myself, what is the definition of X? Or does it have a definition at all? What I found surprised me, as X has several meanings, one of which is defined as a mark, an indicator, or an identifier, as one who leaves their X, their mark, as the signature of an illiterate or incapacitated person. I want to say that I was thinking about in this picture of what my mark would be. And so I grew up this picture that you're about to see is probably about me at 4 years old, if I can get it to. And this was my absolute favorite toy that I got for Christmas one year. And I kept that thing until all the stuffing came out. And I tried my best to get mom to fix it and please just keep it. But unfortunately, poor thing ended up just leaving the earth. And so again, I'm wondering, in the picture over here with my eyes kind of up a little bit, what was I thinking? What mark was I getting ready to leave on the earth? What mark, what X would I end up leaving here as I was going to be, as I would grow up into the world? So many people have fallen into a place, a black hole, an X of their life, if you will, an X indicating a place that you mark, a place that you leave your identity. And when we come across a word that begins with X, it's usually pronounced with a Z or an S sound. And isn't it ironic that the letter X in the alphabet does not even have its own sound or its own identity? And so I use that to say that growing up, I really didn't know my identity. I always felt as if I was something else, somewhere else, should be somebody else, because I never really thought that I fit in. Why would you say that? This looks like a cute picture, right? Looks like I look pretty happy. And here I am with a bunch of big hair and a pony, riding pony, and my other favorite toy, a lion in the background. And this looks pretty happy. Looks pretty good, if you would say so. But I never really thought that I fit in. Why would you say that? Well, because I was given something called enculturation. My family got me involved in all kinds of stuff. As you can see, I was involved in ballet, I was involved in dance, and then mom had me in the theater. And then I grew up in the church. So this is my father taking me to church one church service day. And I grew up in an environment that in the 1960s and 70s looks a little bit like it is today. There was a mixed community that I grew up in, and my very first neighbors were Caucasian ladies. And I'll never forget this story. I had no idea what Mrs. Quinn was getting, and she shows me this white head of something, and I said, well, that looks like a brain. And she just began to laugh because it was actually a cauliflower. And so from there, I always remember and cherish that story. Whenever I see a cauliflower, I think of Mrs. Quinn. And my parents took me all over the place, and we traveled, we did all sorts of things. And you would think that, again, I had a very wonderful childhood, but actually, I really was struggling internally. I grew up wondering, where did I fit in? Who did I belong to? And so when I was 4, my parents gave me a brother. They went back to the Children's Aid Society and they bought me a brother. And this is my brother, my little brother, and myself. As our parents were so big into traveling, they took us all over the place. We went to California. We went to, I think this might be New York or Buffalo, one of the two. But we went through life like normal people would. However, I want to say that life's vicissitudes and conundrums can cause us to lose sight of our identity amid its chaos and crisis. Somehow, unconsciously, we end up blending into our circumstances and unknowingly become enmeshed into our issues that we don't even know how or who or to even recognize ourselves. So again, why did I choose X? The reason I chose X is because there's more of us, all of us that are on this Zoom this evening, that meets the eye to many of our friends and our families. If any of you on the line today, and probably most of you, have been adopted or are parents of adopted individuals, you can relate to the fact that we often don't understand ourselves. We don't understand where we come from, and we certainly try to figure out where we're going. It's my intention to give you a glimpse of not only who I am, but who God has ordained and assigned all of us to be. You and I are God's greatest and kept secret. So X, the anonymous me, sounds a bit oxymoronic, right? Why would somebody go, I'm anonymous? Well, that'll speak to the mental health section in just a second. But X sounds a bit oxymoronic for many of us, but remains very true, especially to those of us who have a relationship with someone we call God or a higher power. But even in that, there's still a part of us that feels X'd out, that feels as if we don't really know who our authentic selves are. We don't know what our authentic selves is to become. It's easy to hide behind rose-colored glasses and think we're okay internally. It's easy for us to hide behind stuff to say, I'm okay, I'm good. You know, when people ask you how you feeling, the first thing you say is, I'm okay, I'm fine. But deep down inside, if we have not begun the work, the hard work to heal our mental health behind our adoption, we will continue to go through life not knowing really who we are, trying to solve for an X that we never really get the answers to. Even in our secret space, we have found and identified have we really identified our true authentic selves? So psychologist David Benner defines identity as who we experience ourselves to be. I didn't know really who I was. I was told my name. I was told that I was born on this day, but my mom and dad often would challenge me with some ridiculous questions. My father would often say, well, how do you know that's the date you were born? How do you know that's the place you were born in? And all I could say was, because I was told. And that's how we as adoptees always live our lives, because they told us that this is what our lives were to be. They told us who we were and we took that, trying to make our own identity, trying to make our own path in the world, trying to make our own way. And yeah, I had a great family. These pictures, this is my family, my mother. This is mom with a big smile and all of her siblings. And this is my grandma. And these are my cousins. And I grew up like any normal family would until, and I say until because I struggled. When I found out I was adopted, I was 12. I'm like, well, all right. I lived my life not knowing where I came from until then. Then I was 50. And at 50 years old, I decided I was going to figure out who I came from. I wanted to know. I was going to do the work. I didn't really know what to look for or what to expect. And I have a good friend who's a political figure here in the city. And he said, I got some connections at the children and youth, or I guess it's the Office of Children and Families here in the city of Philadelphia. He said, I'll help you get your birth certificate, or I'll help you get some information. I said, fine. So it was around my 50th birthday. So that would have been around October the 12th, 10 years ago. And I wrote the letter, sent everything off, paid the fee, and I get a letter back November the 13th. Didn't take them long to come back with an answer in which they said, your birth mother was 25. She was an African-American woman, and that's all we know. And I'm like, what do you mean that's all we know? I said, what about my father? Go back, click a few more keys on the computer. No response. We don't have any information on the father. Can you imagine doing all of that work and you get nothing but a letter that says your mother was 25 and she was an African-American waitress? Is that it? That's all there is to my identity, of to where I come from? You got to be kidding me. So I said, no, that's not good enough. And so I started to do a little bit more digging. My mom had some stuff, some papers in a drawer, and I began to be nosy. And I started looking for whatever I could find that had any information on me. Where did I come from? And so um, I wrote this in the chapter 2 of my book, and so just humor me a bit because this plays out like a story. So the year was 1960 something, and the her is my biological mother having a conversation with my father, my biological father. Hey, I've got something to tell you. You know, I had a doctor's appointment today. Him, yeah, okay. What did the doctor say? Miss Williams, you are blank. Him, you are what? You're what? Pregnant. Him. What? Are you serious? We only did it once. How far along are you? Her. Yeah, see, when I missed my period a few months ago, I knew something was wrong. I kept getting sick and you didn't notice. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to tell you I thought I was because I knew you would deny it and say it wasn't yours, or better yet, you would just skip out on me. Well, you know, you can't take care of another baby. You already have one. See, what I found out was that my biological mother had a child before me. So there's a sibling out here that I know nothing about. And then there's me. And then I found out through just osmosis that she kept the first one and gives me away. What? Who does that? I just couldn't seem to figure it out. And so she says in the story as it reads on, I'm not having an abortion. I've decided something. Him, well, you need to figure something out because you know your mama ain't having none of that. You know she ain't raising no kids, and I'm not. So you better have a plan. Her, breaking into tears. I knew you would say that you wouldn't want this. You're right. I decided to give it away for adoption. All you need to do is sign the papers turning over the paternal rights and it's done. I know I can't take care of another baby. While I was at the doctor, we called the social worker from the Children's Aid Society and they have a family lined up to take the baby. I know you love our baby, but at least we can give the baby the best life possible. Oh, but what about the birth? Will you be there with me? Him? Nope. I don't want to look at the baby because I may not want to give it away. Her, yeah. Well, but okay, wait. What am I going to do when they give the baby to me? Will I be able to look at it? Will I be able to hold it? Well, you know, there's a lot of things to consider, but you're right. I think that me and the other child first, then it's all set. You'll come, sign the papers, and you can just walk away. In fact, we'll both just walk away. And that's exactly what happened. They walked away. I was left wondering, well, again, where did I come from? So now I'm 50 years old having this mental trauma. And so let me begin to say that attachment begins in the womb. We all pretty much know that. So for children who are relinquished at birth, which represents significant trauma, and it leaves a tremendous wound, I want to call it the hole in the soul. There is a tremendous wound that all of us as adoptees carry, and we try to fill it. We put a lot of stuff on top of it, trying to make this hole go away as if it was a pile of dirt. But yet there's something in us that we cannot let go. Adoption is often seen, and we're told this all the time. Adoption is a gift and a beautiful experience for the child and the family. Have y'all been told that? I mean, you don't have to raise your hand, but we all been told that. And so the family is happy to become, the parents are happy to become parents, and the child is I guess if they're adopted at an older age, happy to have and forever family. But there's still something missing. Have you ever, as an adopted person, stopped to think about how you really feel? What goes on in your mind? What goes on in your soul every single day? If you have met your first family or you have not, what do you think about every day? And yes, because adoption begins at the womb, there is something that every mother that has had a child on here has attached to the baby, and it's called an umbilical cord. And that cord is severed at birth, yes, and yet, even still, even today, we still wonder about that umbilical cord attachment. We're still connected somehow. There's something within us that makes us feel that we're missing something, that we're not getting or have not received the proper nutrients in quotation, if you will allow me to say so. And so there's still this innate desire to be attached to something, to be attached to someone that gives us representation of who we are. So the thought has often crossed my mind about the trauma associated with adoption. And most of us deal with two things. We deal with rejection and abandonment. Two issues in life that a lot of therapists, a lot of mental health practitioners, medical doctors are not really able to put their fingers on and put their hands on to give us any real definition or give us any real hope, if you please, because hope continues to blossom, and we never really get to the core of what we're looking for, and that is some answers to filling the holes in our souls. There was a popular TV show in the 1970s called Good Times, and there were two particular episodes that I want to just kind of talk about as it relates to mental health and adoption. One of which is surrounding a lady whose character's name was Loretta. Loretta was pregnant, and she ends up giving birth in the home of Mr. and Mrs. James Evans. And she decided before she went into labor that she was going to give her child up for adoption. I believe that may be the first time I ever heard about adoption on television. And so this topic of adoption raises the issue as to how do we, and if they were dealing with it and speaking about it in the 1970s, what progress has been made now to help individuals with healing through the adoption process. I can imagine that this was very difficult for my biological mother to consider giving me away as she was a 25-year-old waitress. And I can imagine her going through the same struggle that the character Loretta went through. But I often asked myself, what did she do with me for 5 days? I was kept in the hospital for 5 days, and from October the 12th to October the 17th. And I asked the question of myself, and I wish that I had some answers, but I don't, unfortunately. Did she breastfeed me? Was there any skin-to-skin contact? Or was I just placed in a blanket and pushed into in a bassinet and wheeled down some hallway in a hospital with a zillion other babies to wait my turn? And it's something that I struggle with. I still struggle with, and I have asked questions about numerous times. So let me tell you that trauma in adoption is very real. And part of the problem is that there's a lack of communication and talking about the trauma associated with adoption, which leads to something called disenfranchised grief. This particular grief is not acknowledged or validated by society. We all know about grief in the normal sense. You lose a dog, you lose a loved one. We grieve properly in that particular instance. However, the trauma associated with disenfranchised grief is not something that many practitioners are able to deal with or able to even speak about, because the trauma and the grief are significant to mental health concerns. Adoptees, statistically, to give you some information, adoptees are at a higher risk for mental health disorders. Mental health disorders are prevalent in birth families. Yes, we understand that, but there's a higher level of depression and bipolar disorder associated with being an adopted individual. And sadly, and I hate to say this, adoptees are 4 times more than likely than non-adoptees to attempt suicide. And I can state that I was one of those, because during my lifetime, I didn't feel that I had a place of belonging. I didn't feel like anybody wanted me. From my family wanted me, my mom and dad, but relationship building was very difficult and very challenging for me because no one really stuck around long enough to get to know me. And I lived with that, and I still wrestle with that even to this day, because as I stated, rejection and abandonment are extremely difficult for adoptees to get over and to get through. Some of the mental health symptoms that adoptees tend to face, not everyone, but tend to, is depression, anxiety, and bipolar, as I mentioned, ADHD, PTSD, ODD, and the list goes on and on. And because of this emotional detachment that adoptees face at a higher level, we face something called attachment insecurity, which is why I can speak for me in that relationships were very difficult to maintain. If you are adopted later in life, as an older child, the struggle to remain sane and whole, and to obtain healthy mental relationships and healthy relationships, period, is long lasting and fulfilling. Attachment is the emotional connectedness to a human being, primarily a parent. And I want to go to page 45 of my book, which is the last section that I'm going to read. My parents, my birth mother named me Sherry Denise Williams. That was my name when I was born. And to show you, here's the proof. I obtained this evidence in about a month ago. And this is my non-certified copy of my original birth certificate. It was issued June 30th, 2023, and that was my name. So when I began to think about what does my name actually mean, the name Sherry means love, and it's the French word for amour. And I want to say that even though I never got the opportunity to meet my biological mother, I'm grateful for the name that she chose for me. And she chose that name because I would guess that she really loved me. I would think that she loved me. And so Sherry has become a personality, my personality, and describes who I am. One who has a quest for adventure. This is the meaning of the name Sherry, who makes friends easily and is a dynamic, versatile visionary. That's me. If you spend any amount of time hanging with me, if you choose to kick it with me, as they say, you will definitely find that I am certainly one of those individuals. I have a big heart. I love unconditionally. I love just everybody. I embrace everybody. Everybody is my friend. And so to give you a little bit more background, having found that out, I was very excited to know that there's another person, and I write my book through the lenses of biblical characters. And if you are familiar with anything related to scripture or the Bible or any biblical stories, you probably heard of a story about a little boy named Moses. Moses was born to his birth mother, and at the age of 3 months old was put in a basket made out of sticks and twigs and all of this sort of stuff, and was placed on the Nile River to float for approximately 3 months until he was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter and raised as a prince. So I want to say that my life mirrors that same expression. I was placed in a bassinet, wheeled down a hallway, picked up by somebody from the Children's Aid Society, and waited until my birth mother, Nathaniel and Sadie, my adopted parents adopted me, Nate and Sadie Walker, and and that's how I became Terri Lynn Walker. That's how I became I know my last name is Champion, but I was married to my kid's father and I just liked the name. So I thought it was pretty cool. So that's about the only thing I kept. But I was Terry Lynn Walker and raised by some magnificent family, magnificent parents who really have taught me the art of becoming. And my book is dedicated to my biological family, my birth mother, who I am going to reveal to you in just a minute. So psychologists say, if you were told your parents loved you and wanted to give you a better life, people can conflate love to loss. So because my name was Sherry and because my name means love, there is a lyric to a song that I'm not going to sing it, but I'm just going to read it. It's a song by a group called Commission, and the lyrics go like this. I can tell you how I feel for you and all the things that I could do to show you the love I have is true. There are many words I could sing, some melodies that I'd like to play to show you the love I have is true. But my thoughts would change and my words, they'll pass. And only what I do is going to last. And this will show you the love I have is true. The song ends with love isn't love till you've given it away. And I write this at the end of that paragraph. Dear first mother and father X, thank you for loving me enough to give me away. All of us were loved by our biological families, our first families, whatever birth families, whatever word you choose to put in front of that. But yet that still does not take away the disenfranchised grief. There are stages of grief. There's 5 of them: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And so at this point in my life, I am at a place where I have now begun, or I'm at a place where I can say I am happy and that I was accepted, that I was loved by my biological mother, that I was also loved by my adopted family. And as adoptees, we tend to feel somewhat stuck between 2 worlds. We feel stuck between the people who gave us life and the people who taught us how to live and what living looks like and feels like. But I want to just kind of close by saying that through the course of time, and I had to be 59 years and almost a half years old to meet and see who my birth mother was. And that's her. It all started with this lady, Shirley Ann Williams. Now you probably are like, man, y'all look exactly alike. Gee whiz, that's pretty uncanny. It is. And I didn't know who she was. And you're like, well, how did you get the picture? Well, let me just hasten on to tell you how that happened. So you saw that, I'm sorry, it all started with this guy. This is my biological brother. He's 2 years younger than I am. He lives in California. And the child that I mentioned to you about, she had before me, she's my sister, 2 years older than me. And at some point in time, my brother is trying to make a pilgrimage to Philadelphia to meet me for the first time. Of course, we have FaceTimed and we've chatted and so forth. But he said, how did you find me? I said, I didn't. You were introduced to me by your uncle. His uncle's name is Mark, and he was the catalyst for introducing my brother and I. And we've had some really interesting conversations, more questions than anything. But nevertheless, I think we look alike. Y'all can be the judge of that if you choose to. But I think we look alike. And I'm excited to know that I have some relatives out there. But I'm also excited to say that I'm not only a mom, but I'm also a grandmom. This is not my grandchild, but can you recognize the pony? Y'all remember the pony from before? My parents kept this pony until my son came along in 1989. So ponies lived a few years. Unfortunately, he no longer exists. He's been put out to pasture. But these are my children. This is my son, Tony, and my daughter, Erin. And I'm proud to be their mom. But can you imagine what they felt when I told them that I had my birth certificate and showed them the picture of my birth mother, Shirley? They couldn't believe it. They were amazed. They were shocked. They were, wow, is what they said. And we're still processing it. We'll probably end up going out. I'm sure eventually at some point we'll end up going to family counseling to get further healing from it, because it is very difficult and traumatic. Unfortunately and sadly, my birth mother passed away several years ago at the age of 54. And so I live with just this photograph of her. And I'm delighted for that. But I'm also excited to say that I did find some more family, and I found these family members by attending the National Untangling Our Roots conference in Kentucky. And I'm so grateful that the DNA Angels were a part of that event, because they were helpful in me identifying and finding where I came from. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, I have some cousins. This gentleman here is my cousin Byron, and this is my cousin Lane. And so I'm excited to be on now this side of the journey to becoming and knowing where I came from and having somebody to connect with. And I'm grateful. And if you would like to get a copy of this Rooted in Adoption book, to which you will find the story that I wrote on page 22, because there's no names mentioned. Everything in here is anonymous, but my story is on page 22. If you would like a copy of that, I'm sure that the writers would be honored. And if you'd like to see the video, please do so. But again, we all are on this journey of healing, and we all are going to arrive there one day and someday. Thank you so much. And I hope that this has been a wonderful blessing for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terri, for sharing your story. We appreciate you coming on tonight.
Well, thank you. I again cannot say how honored I am to have been a part of this amazing happy hour. And I said to Miss Marcie in the meeting, I said, if it's happy hour, we need something to drink. I got something to drink right here. And but thank you again. This was just so awesome. And I wasn't sure which direction, how we were going to make it all tie together. But I hope that I shared some information that would be helpful to you as you all continue on with your life and with your story and developing who we all are becoming, because becoming is something that continues on forever. We never stop becoming until we stop.
This is true. So true. Okay, well, listen, this is going to end the presentation. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording at this time. And we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions from the attendees. So